Okay, personal donations. Somebody in your group, in your neighborhood, in your community that would like to put some money into this good idea. Tax credit programs, CEDFs, Community Economic Development Investment Funds. A program unique to Nova Scotia, spreading out, but it allows you, in many ways, to become your own banker using community money and keeping it in the community. Sweat equity. Sweat equity used to be something that you could say, there's a value on us taking every weekend and doing all of this construction. We don't have to pay laborers to do it. That is not generally accepted anymore. I don't know why. Bottom line is, it costs something for people to do work. So if you do it yourself, there's a value to it that should be able to be enveloped back into the cost. But that's not considered anymore an available piece of equity. For our purposes, we define equity as the amount of money you need to raise to access conventional mortgage or loan funding. Most mortgages for a commercial operation require 25% equity. It might be up a little, might be down a little, but it's 25% was a benchmark. This was a model of a project I'd worked on. I'd worked on 2 housing co-ops since I moved back to Cape Breton about 10 years ago. One was in Shetty Camp, and it was an equity-based co-op where the individuals had tried for years to get a private developer to come in and build an apartment building, but they were not successful. So we started talking, and they built a 20-unit higher-end seniors co-op. It wasn't meant to be affordable. It was meant to be, you had to pay a certain amount of money to get into it, and then the rents were fairly high because they owned it. A co-op, just because it's not affordable, is still a co-op. This one, $1,400,000, let's say that's the total cost of it. You can get $7,500 to new need and demand. If it's a small community, the proof of concept's fairly easy, you know, but you do need to document it. You folks in the MBA program are learning all that stuff. That is required. It's proof of business. Proponent equity. Someone has got to come up with that $350,000 to access that $1,042,500. In this case, the group came up with a figure, divide that 350 by 20. I think it was 17,000 and change that you put up as a member of the co-op. It allowed you to stay there, and you got it back when you left. Okay? The other co-op I built, the group were able to access land that covered the cost of their equity and then to get a mortgage, and that was an affordable co-op, and that was in Sydney Mines. This with New Deal and Future Growth Co-op. Okay, so this is the part where I get to say, everything has changed. When I started in this stuff, when I worked for Co-op Atlantic back in the 80s, it was pretty easy to create a housing co-op. Pretty easy, it was encouraged. You had the support of CHF Canada that were always there, a great organization that did lobbying, they did education, and they were available. They were always available, and still are. Unfortunately, the government side of it is diminished a lot. So what I'm saying is, yep, you can do anything now. The rules, all the old rules are gone. It's time for innovation, and however you're going to find that amount of equity, through fudge sales? No. Through investors? Yeah. Why not? It's a business. You got to find a way to make it work. Now, the other part that I want to throw into this, though, is, as I mentioned, I started this stuff in the 80s. There's not less people in Canada now, and there's not less low-income people in Canada, but the government has pulled back their intentions on funding for that sector. So I don't know what happened. Something happened somewhere, but to me, that just means that the rules have all changed. But the one rule that has opened is the rule of innovation. And how you figure you can come up with equity, it may be individual to every group. There is no, if someone comes and says, oh, it's got to be this, this, and this, well, yeah, maybe. At the end of the day, you need to come up with an amount of money to get somebody else to give you a loan, or to convince them to give you a loan. That could happen too. So I throw it out to you. How can people generate money in a community to create community-based needs, to fulfill community-based needs like housing? Any thoughts? CEDAs, yeah. CEDAs are, for those who don't know, you can raise money within your community. People get a tax credit back. The money can be used by the group. It's either a closed CEDA, which means it's for one typical project, or an open, which can be for several. But the CEDA itself would be able to put money into that equity requirement. But that goes back to the idea that own your own bank. The CEDA allows you almost to create your own little bank, to raise money in your community, to keep it in your community, to do stuff. And this conversation is not about CEDA, so I'm just saying that's one option. But any other options anybody can think of to raise money to get that mortgage, to come up with that 25%?
I was involved with an affordable housing project in Coop, Aylward, and one of the ways that we raised money was we received free land or negotiated land from the municipality, but we also worked with a like-minded organization that was looking for transitional housing from the Women's Crisis Center into a longer, well, kind of a mid-term arrangement so they could put their life together. So we partnered with them. One floor of the building, with 32 units, was reserved for them, and the remaining 3 floors were put together with progressive rent levels. So not everyone was on the low end. It kind of, there was low, mid, and high end. So there's different models of affordability as well.
Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts? How to raise equity?
There's some credit unions across the country are looking at communities or corporate social responsibility. They have a piece there, and they're always looking at ways of investing in their community that's outside of the box and social in nature. Not all of them are doing it, but some of them are. That might be a source of some funding.
So credit unions are creating a new type of funding that may act as equity? Interesting. Other thoughts? Anybody got an idea?
I just saw this on the West Coast. Something for the community, i.e. community gardens, rec centers for kids, whatever, and then we would get private funding as he was just describing.
You want to finish there?
Yeah, I was just going to say, also, I've just come across this recently, is crowdfunding. Have you heard about that? Where, maybe somebody else would have more detail about it than I do, but we're looking at it for some projects in our city where you find an organization on the web who will put together lack of a better word, a marketing plan for you, put it out there wide, far and wide, and ask people to make a contribution to a good cause. They take 5% or whatever off the top, and they give you the rest of it.
Cloud funding, yeah, that's cool. Crowdfunding. Oh.
Actually, to follow up on what Tony said, I've only come across just the one. It's called Kiva.com, K-I-V-A, and it works around the world. Folks, they could want to find money for an educational purpose, or they might want to build a co-op or support a single woman or a family or whatever around the world. And they put forward a proposal, and if they're microloans. They're all managed by companies around the world or nonprofits. A lot of them are co-ops, and basically the minimum amount to invest is $25. And that investment is, I think their statistics right now are 98% return on your investment, in the sense of your $25 will come back to you and then you reloan it. So that $25 just keeps being loaned to individuals and groups around the world. And once you've been vetted by them, and there's an on-the-ground management company sort of involved, like a co-op, then the money comes in for the amount of money that you're looking for.
Cool. Sir?
Yes, it may be unpopular and seem naive, but I was involved in building co-op housing in the EMJ well after Section 56.1 and Section 95 programs were involved, well after Palmer had attacked public housing, and they continued to attack other conservatives. I actually think that the fight is a political fight. It's not a question of like looking to trying to raise private capital. So it was actually a question of focusing on the federal government, focusing on the federal government, and fighting hard to get housing dollars into. We need a national housing strategy. We need to have public housing. In Vancouver, the experience that we had building the Laurie Pearl Housing Co-op, the Woodward's Housing Co-op, Citygate Housing Co-op, well after the federal government programs had expired, was a political fight that took place over a period of 8 or 9 years. It was one that involved demonstrations in the streets, lobbying, meeting with cabinet ministers, and continued demonstrations in the streets and mobilizing. And I think that we're spinning our wheels if in looking to build housing, if we're just looking to the private sector. The private sector can't do it. They won't do it because there's no dollars in it.
I agree with everything you said. I think CHF Canada needs to be supported more on the grassroots side. On the other side, housing needs tend to be immediate. The equity model that I mentioned earlier, I came up with that towards my parents. I knew they were going to get to a certain age where they couldn't live in their own house and they would need to go somewhere, so how could I try to do something that was affordable? And I mean, there's only so many years there, so there is the long term and then there's the immediate, and I think both exist at the same time. Somebody, oh.
Sorry. I just wanted to, I agree 100% with the gentleman back, obviously, but I did want to mention that I had the opportunity to go to Italy, and cooperatives, not just housing cooperatives, but cooperatives in Italy have actually started up funds where different cooperatives actually provide money into equity for other cooperatives to use as equity. So it's cooperatives helping other cooperatives. And I think that although we definitely need to hold government accountable to provide affordable housing, I think as cooperatives we also need to stand proud and say that we're going to support one another. And that's something else that I think really needs to happen in this country.
Yep. Mr. Sparrow.
So these are all great specific examples, but I would think probably all of the above.
All of the above. And a whole pile that we haven't even touched on. And to the soon-to-be MBA crowd here, a big part of your work, most of you, is going to be finding money, finding equity, and making sure that that equity is not going to be lost because somebody will want to be beaten on you if you do. But that is a part of the job. Well, any closing comments? Well, I appreciate you taking the time to listen to me. And as I say, it's a brave new world. Innovation is available. There's no shortage of money on the planet. Let's find ways to get it to do the things we need to do. Thank you very much.